It's 2023, and it's time for an all-new 7 Series from BMW, and not to worry, they're still making them in the traditional way with internal combustion engines, but this particular one, is completely different. It's all electric. What's it like? Let's go for a drive. I'm your host, Brian Max, racing driver, lover of driving fast, fun things, and on this channel, you get reviews for drivers from drivers. Now, we are driving something fast. It is an EV, a new one from BMW. This is the i7. Whether it's fun, we will find out in this episode, but it is also the middle of winter here, and it has been impossible to keep this i7 clean, so I apologize for a dirty car in this episode. Simply has been impossible to keep this thing clean. Nonetheless, before we get into the details of this i7, let's have a look at it in a little more depth. With this all-new 7 Series, BMW is doing something very interesting this time around. Yes, you can get your internal combustion engine in your 7, but you can also get this, which is completely electric. Since it says xDrive on the back, that gives you a clue. It is all-wheel drive. That means it's powered by 2 electric motors, one at each axle. Combined, the motors make 544 horsepower and 549 pounds of torque, but there's also a boost function that maxes out your torque at 605 pounds of it for about 10 seconds. The battery is 101 kilowatt hour size, and the maximum charge rate is 195 kilowatts. They say the range is 300 miles or about 500 kilometers, and this is winter, so I've got some thoughts on that later. Steering is electrically assisted. At the front is variable ratio, variable assist, and this one is fitted with the optional 4-wheel steering. Suspension's based around double wishbones at the front, a 5-link at the rear, air springs and adaptive dampers, and those air springs lower when you are in sport mode. Brakes are 4-piston caliper at the front. This one's fitted with the optional M Sport brakes. Single piston at the rear. Wheels and tires are either 20s or 21s. This one is rocking an optional 21. Curb weight of this i7 xDrive 60 is 6,000 pounds, and that is about 1,000 pounds heavier than the internal combustion engine 760. If you've joined us for previous episodes, you know I love BMW's cockpits, and this i7 is no exception. I'm able to set myself up perfectly here behind the wheel. The wheel is the right shape, the right size, although it has a goofy flat bottom bit here. But otherwise, I'm very happy with the fundamentals of the seating position behind the wheel. BMW does an excellent job of setting up drivers to be effective and be comfortable, and this being the largest BMW sedan, I'm very, very comfortable here as well. This seat is both comfortable and supportive, and of course it's cooled, it's heated, and there's a massaging function. What more could you want? Visibility is not too bad here either, but it's absolutely enhanced by front and rear cameras. There is no shortage of visibility. I've got the instrument cluster set to the camera display so I can actually see what's going on right in front of the vehicle. That also allows me to have a very low seating position. I'm seated as low as the seat will go, and then I can see exactly what's immediately in front of me. It's absolutely perfect. Since this is an all-new BMW, we have their latest infotainment system. We've got the full digital instrument cluster and the big screen for BMW's iDrive 8, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I do love these screens because BMW has figured out to make these work in almost all types of light. Even direct sunlight, I've been able to see these displays. These are just excellent tops in the business for sure. What doesn't really impress me, though, is the iDrive 8. There's just far too much complexity, and it's not as intuitive as it should be, and this is probably my 5th or 6th time with a new BMW that has iDrive 8. I still don't like this system. Yes, I can get to all the functions that I need, but I'm really not happy with the way this interface works. It does all of the things, but sometimes it takes too many buttons to push and too many swipes to get to the function that I'm looking for. Speaking of which, this entire interior seems to have haptic buttons all over the place, whether it's the lock or unlock buttons on the steering wheel or, for example, the glove box. Plus, there are plenty of Rolls-Royce touches. You know, we've driven Rolls-Royces on this channel. One of the most obvious ones is the full power doors, not just soft closed doors, but full power doors. So when you stop, if you don't feel like opening the door, well, you push this button here, your passenger can do the same, and rear passengers can also do the same. They can open and close their doors with the touch of a button. Several things I love about this interior. For starters, it's just how lovely and quiet it is in here. It's very well designed. It's beautiful in here. Love the way it's laid out, and I love all of the design touches. This interior lighting, this accent lighting, whatever BMW calls it in BMW speak, is very, very cool. Yes, it's customizable, but it does a bunch of things. For example, when the phone rings, it lights up. It kind of flashes so you know that the phone is ringing. I'm not quite sure how you'd miss your phone calls. If you run Apple CarPlay like I do, it's pretty obvious, but nonetheless, it does a bunch of things. Also, when you use the power doors, these interior lights also flash for you to let you know that the door is closing. In terms of spaciousness, well, this is perfectly good for large adult human beings, no problem whatsoever. Everybody will be comfortable, and of course, your right rear passenger has plenty of options, especially if there isn't anyone sitting in the front passenger seat. Even though this is a full electric and there's a whole lot of batteries going on inside this i7, there's actually a decent amount of room in the trunk. I think the only thing I don't care for, but I can't imagine anyone would really use this for that purpose, but there isn't a pass-through large enough through the trunk into the cabin for my snowboard, as I discovered the other day. One of the other things I love about this experience, this driving experience, being inside the i7, is all of the cool sounds that this thing makes. The sounds were composed by famed Hollywood composer Hans Zimmer, and this makes some very cool sounds, as we'll probably pick up throughout the episode. We don't often do backseat reviews on this channel because we're interested in driving. I'm going to leave the minutia to the non-driving channels out there. You know what those are. But there are some things we do need to talk about here. For example, if you do order your i7 with all of this loungy stuff in the back, you can find yourself in this seat and be very, very comfortable. Not sure how long that took, but here we are. I'm lounging in the back seat of the new 2023 BMW i7. Once you are here, you can heat and cool your seat, and there is a massaging function in all 4 seats in this particular i7, which is not a bad thing, but there are more things that we can control. For example, we can ask for this 30-something inch display to drop down, and at the same time the blind closes at the back to eliminate glare, and I think this is an 8K screen, and this is not connected, of course. I'm not quite sure how to do that, and this car belongs to BMW Canada. Our options here in this part of the world are Prime Video, Netflix, YouTube, and some Canadian things I wouldn't really be interested in watching, but nonetheless, this is a very large screen. It would be interesting to watch some kind of programming while you are being driven. As well, once you're here, there are plenty of other things that you can control. We can put the display back. And there it goes. It's all tucked away. And then, of course, we can make phone calls from back here. We can control the audio programming as well as all of the blinds. And because I've got a camera stuck there, I'm not going to turn up the blinds on that side. What I am going to do is hit open all, and then everything opens up. I think that takes about a minute to change the seat from standard position to the lounge position, and of course move the front seat out of the way as well. Very, very bizarre, but I suppose if you're being driven, you might enjoy this. Launch control active. Yeah, that's quick. And then we've got that Hans Zimmer soundtrack. Oh, wow. With that boost paddle pulled, this thing is incredibly quick. It just accelerates like a freight train. This is ridiculous. This is 6,000 pounds, mind you, and it accelerates incredibly quick. Just wow. And then, of course, the sounds that this thing makes when you're accelerating or decelerating is very, very cool as well. Apparently, this will do 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds, well under 5 seconds. It tops out at 140, 150 miles an hour. This i7 kind of deceives you in terms of its speed because it's so quiet in here that, you know, when you look down at the speedometer, you realize, oh, I'm going a little faster than I should be doing right now. We'll talk about this in a little bit in terms of dynamics, but BMW has tuned these electric motors to deliver power to each wheel impeccably. Yeah, no matter what I'm doing on any kind of road surface, right now it's wet. When I've driven this in the snow, it has no trouble putting down power and distributing power to the appropriate wheel. This is an incredibly refined all-wheel drive system in this i7. Beyond this very opulent and quiet interior, the highlight of this i7 for me is how rewarding it is to drive it. It's actually very satisfying to drive, and that's for a number of reasons. Obviously, the responsiveness of the electric motors make a huge impression here, and yes, this is as quick as every other big luxury SUV, no doubt about that. I think the reason it is so satisfying to drive is because all of its systems are so refined and they're really meant to work together. The steering does a fine job, the brakes do a fine job, but what is exceptional is the suspension. That's the air springs and the adaptive dampers as well. This four-wheel steering makes this big i7 exceptionally nimble. This drives like maybe the size of a 3 Series, even though this is a big 7 Series. This is incredibly nimble for its size and its weight. The thing is, with this air suspension and the adaptive dampers, body and wheel control is absolutely spot on. Yes, this is very luxurious. This is not meant to be a M5 CS, for example, but this is a very luxurious driving and riding experience, and that's exactly what you've got here. Sure, I'm driving this around generally in sport mode because sport mode does drop the suspension a touch and then firms up the damping, and I've got a wonderful ride and handling combination with my sport mode. It just is spot on. Love the way I can hustle this thing through corners and around corners and do whatever I need to do, and that just speaks to how well refined all of these systems are. Normally, BMW impresses me with their brake pedals, but in this case, that's not quite true. This brake pedal just doesn't have a positive feel, especially on initial application. Just doesn't give me that positive feel or feedback that I want. On the other hand, brake power is exceptional. I had someone pull out in front of me the other day, had to jump on the brakes in this thing, and you know it's 6,000 pounds, had no trouble slowing this down whatsoever. Just incredible braking power here. And I should mention that there is sort of a one pedal mode. When you do pull back BMW's new little shift lever thing twice, you go from drive and then into this B mode. I don't know if you can see it here, but there's a big B on the display, and what that means is that it's sort of engine braking mode, and it's kind of a decent one pedal driving system. I've gotten very used to it. I rarely touch the brake pedal in day-to-day driving. It's just a wonderful EV driving experience. On the other hand, I've got a lot of confidence with the steering in this thing. Part of it has to do with the four-wheel steering, which I just love in this car. For example, right now at speed, the rear wheels would steer in phase with the fronts, and that makes lane changes nice and smooth. Then when we round tighter corners, they steer out of phase, shortening that turning radius. Again, this car is incredibly nimble, and steering is really the highlight. Even though there's not a lot of feel or feedback that comes through the steering wheel, steering is very responsive, and this thing is incredibly nimble for its size and weight. Gotta love that. Love the way this sounds. Love the way it pulls. Just a wonderful, wonderful, luxurious EV driving experience. And from this perspective, it's absolutely a joy to drive. This is very much a BMW EV. And if you like BMWs and are thinking about going electric, I highly recommend you look at this because it is purely BMW in terms of its dynamics. It's very much that BMW luxury EV sedan, and I love driving this thing. How do you spec yours? Well, this is an interesting question, but it's actually fairly easy to answer because there is basically one performance-minded option, which we will get into in a little bit. Otherwise, I think you want to spec yours kind of like this, which is fully equipped, or at least almost fully equipped. Base price in the United States is $119,000. Here in Canada, it's $147,000. As tested with virtually every option box tick, this totals about $160,000 in the US or $194,000 here in Canada. This is obviously finished in this two-tone paint. It's a $12,000 option in the United States or in Canada. As far as decisions that need to be made, I think the one thing you do have to get is the M Sport brakes. Regardless of how you spec it, you need those brakes because with something as heavy and as quick and as fast as this thing, you want the biggest brakes possible. That's important. Then you have to make some decisions about color and trim and that sort of thing. And for the most part, I like how this is spec'd. However, you have to make some decisions about that lounge area in the back seat and whether you want all of that stuff if you're going to be driven around from time to time, or if you plan on driving some VIPs, if that is your jam. For me, not sure if I'd get all of that. It is satisfying to drive as it's spec'd, and I don't know if I'd want to be driven in this i7, to be fair. My verdict, well, since this is an electric, let's talk about energy consumption for just a second. BMW says this is good for about 300 miles or 500 kilometers worth of range, but since this is winter, that has an impact on our range, and I've only been able to get about 220 miles or 350 kilometers out of a full charge of this i7. Now, to be fair, I'm driving this i7 like I enjoy it, not that I'm chasing an energy consumption number. As for the rest of this, the driving experience is absolutely top-notch. Whether you need all of the loungy stuff in the back is another question. Whether you plan to be driven in your i7 is a question that you can answer. For me, I don't know if I would get all of that because this i7 is so enjoyable to drive. As for the looks, however, well, I think BMW's design department needs to go back to the drawing board, and it's a bit of a disappointment to look at that because this thing drives so well. The interior is beautiful. This thing drives much smaller than it actually is, and that has to do with the rear wheel steer, of course. But as a big luxury EV sedan, I absolutely love driving this thing. I love being behind the wheel. I just wish it looked a little different. Thanks for hanging out with me today and having a look at this 2023 BMW i7 xDrive 60. Hope you liked this episode, and if you did, well, you're not new to YouTube. You know what to do. Smash the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, like this video, and as always, sharing is caring, so please share this with your friends, especially on Reddit, because on Reddit, they really need to see reviews for drivers from drivers. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below, lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you again next time. And remember, cars don't understeer by themselves, not even BMW EV luxury sedans.